Hi everyone and welcome back to our Happy Podcast, Healthcare and Pharmaceutical Insights. This series is going to be looking at launch excellence, and in this series I'm going to be speaking to a number of guests who all have experience of launching either products, companies or services, and will be able to offer some valuable advice to you if you're in that space. So sit back, relax and enjoy. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode in Happy, or Healthcare and Pharmaceutical Insights Forum and Podcast. I'm really pleased that you've taken time to join me. And again, we're looking around this subject title of launch excellence and what does it mean. And I'm delighted to welcome Andy Hayes along to the podcast today. Andy is someone who, I'm going to put him in a bit of a pedestal at the moment, is an expert in this space. And talking a little bit about his experience of marketing and international marketing more recently. So welcome, Andy. Do you want just to give people a quick intro to who you are so that we know who this expert is on the other end of the camera?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Colin. It's a very kind introduction, and I'm hoping that my nearest and dearest colleagues don't see this too quickly, because I'm sure the abuse will follow. But no, thank you very much. I think it's a great privilege to be given the opportunity to share some of my experience and. Just very briefly, for those people who are going to join in the call, my career started not in sales and marketing, but actually as a diagnostic radiographer in the NHS back in 1989. So I did 8 years of clinical radiography, many diagnostic procedures, which actually gave me a great foundation for not only dealing with people, but also then moving into the world of sales. And my first sales job was in radiology sales, and I'm very grateful for that, both in terms of the joys of contrast media, but also in capital equipment as well. Before I moved on into cardiology. But after radiology, that was when I took my first marketing job, and I moved into the very specialist area of pulmonary hypertension. Pulmonary hypertension has given me a great opportunity not only to refine and hone my marketing skills, but it also gave me the opportunity to do my first dedicated product launch in the UK. But then also to be invited to go and sit on the global launch team. And then, this is where I really built my international marketing experience. Was involved in not only launching in the UK, but launching in many and varied countries around the world. Before then obviously moving on to what I'm currently doing, which is a second international launch. So it's really been not only a roller coaster, but a highly thoroughly enjoyable role, that's for sure.
Good. And I'm pleased actually we've got you on just maybe touch a little bit on the international side as well, because the people I've had on so far have offered some really helpful insights, possibly slightly more from the UK side. But, as we go through some of these questions that we've looked at, then I'm sure there'll be people watching or listening to this will be keen to tap into your international experience. So good. Thanks for that. Quick intro. So launch excellence is the title of this series. So from your perspective, what would you say your definition is, or your understanding is of launch excellence?
Thanks, Colin. I think that's a really great question, because actually in terms of there are many definitions out there from the great and the good, but I think there are a few fundamental things that really make launch excellence a great process for me. I think the first one, and certainly the one that I felt most benefit from, is making sure that you've got all the functions associated with creating your launch all sat around the same table. I think without those functions, there's bound to be something that will not make the launch a success. And they can be quite diverse, and they can actually also really offer some insights into getting all your questions answered before you get to the fateful day. I think the other thing is obviously to make sure that before you get to that launch point, you really have worked with your key customers to make sure that as much as possible you've given them the opportunity to give input into not only for a pharmaceutical, for the clinical studies that are being developed, but also in terms of what do they expect to see from the product once it's launched. And I think if you can get these things right, then it makes your life much easier when it comes to that fateful day when you finally say, this is go day.
Yeah, and that, as you say, that fateful day, exciting day, nerve-wracking day, all of it, all in one. But it takes it's a long time before you actually get to that point. But it's that's what you're aiming for, isn't it?
It is, and I think one of the key things, Colin, is actually to make sure that you've got a great plan behind it. I think we inevitably, as marketeers, we plan and plan and plan, and then plan a little bit more. We research, and we become experts within our own world. But I think one thing that we have to do is to put some very carefully thought out KPIs into what we're doing, and also keep checking against those KPIs that we're actually progressing in the right direction. Certainly for me, working off things such as Gantt charts, timelines, real cross-functional plans within that as well, but also making sure that everybody feels a shared responsibility.
Good. So, what's been your experience then? I mean, your experience as we kind of slightly joked at the start, but I mean, in all seriousness, your experience is very strong and is good in this space. But in general, what has been your experience of launching, and obviously in your case, launching products?
Yeah, I think I mean my first launch was when I was still working within radiology, and I supported one of the product managers in getting a new indication launched into the market. And I think as somebody who had not necessarily come from a true marketing background, it was very interesting to see how launches worked. When it came to doing my own launch, then I think one of the great things was that having a network of people around you who have maybe gone through it before is incredibly helpful. But actually, and one of the things that I bore people to death with is that people think that you can either be great at sales or great at marketing without learning. And actually, one of the things that I've always said to anybody is that I'm not great because I just can do it. I'm great because I've taken the learnings throughout the years. And certainly, one of the key things is making sure that you keep heading in the direction that you think you should be heading, and you don't get sidetracked. The complexities of launch can mean that minor things can really skittle things, and you can end up really running off in the wrong direction. And inevitably, what people want to see is regular progress, but also, it's inevitable that things will crop up. They're not necessarily problems, but they're certainly challenges to the direction of travel. And I think having the flexibility, both as the launch lead, but also in the team in which you're working with, to address those problems, and to make sure that you get the ship back on course is very important.
So you're still learning then, is what you're saying as well. You're still learning, even though I said you're an expert, but you're still learning, aren't you?
Every day's a school day, Colin.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
I think within companies, organizations, within those companies, everybody wants to feel that they want to do things slightly differently.
Hmm.
Things do change as products come through the market. But I think the other thing is the environment is always changing.
Hmm.
We certainly see within healthcare that the assessment of new products is very much data driven, outcome driven. For those countries that use health technology assessment, then the data really has to fit with the pricing framework that you want to work with. So I don't think anybody can sit back on their laurels and say, I've done one
Yeah.
launch, so I can do it exactly the same for everything else.
Yeah.
It's very different.
Yeah.
And I think the one beauty of being in the international role is that you can take the learnings from all the various countries that you've worked with.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
certainly some of them would appear massively easy compared to
Hmm.
others. I'm not going to
Yeah.
name names, but again, I think it's down to the complexity of the healthcare system and particularly how healthcare is funded.
Yeah, you're already actually touching on what the next question is, which is some of what are some of the key things to consider before maybe we talk about the challenges. But that international aspect that you are beginning to touch on now, that the world is obviously a smaller place now from the fact of how we can communicate with each other, how we
Yeah.
interact with each other. Trying to tie it into our next question then in terms of key things to consider. Do you think that's been a good thing when it comes to launching in terms of your ability to communicate with your colleagues internationally, bringing things together maybe that little bit quicker? Has that helped?
I think it does. I think one of the great things is if you've got a great bunch of colleagues to work with, where people are open to learning from other experiences, then it makes the journey so much easier.
Hmm. Hmm.
Often, um, key countries are the ones that will launch first, and those key countries have different definitions as to why they're a key country. But ultimately, those countries that launch later will inevitably be looking for the learnings, both for success, but also in terms of whether there were things that could have been done better.
Yeah. Yeah.
No matter how well you've thought out the launch plan, there's always something that occurs that are completely out of your hands.
Yeah.
So I think having open colleagues who are both prepared to share the great things, but also to share the learnings is really vital.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. There's challenges in everything. There's challenges in every role. Certainly, the majority of pharmaceutical positions that I have some kind of involvement with within companies from a recruitment perspective, there's challenges in all roles, and that is the same when it comes to marketing. It comes to product launching and launch excellence. What are some of the challenges that you have seen, and have you got any advice that you can offer to overcome some of these challenges when it comes to launching?
I think we've not got enough time, Colin,
I
but
was going to say,
certainly.
yeah. We've only got about another 15 minutes or so, Andy. So if you could,
um, I think a, a lot of the challenges inevitably come from internal process. Um, and I think we can split it down into internal and external pressures. Um, I think there's always the want. I won't say it's a need, but there's always a want to launch quicker than was in the original plan. We know that the amount of time, if we talk about pharmaceuticals, the amount of time that we have in patent protection gets potentially shorter, and so the peak value of the product inevitably comes down. So, there is this, can we shorten the launch timeline? I think externally there's the pressure of what authorities want to see as the data generation, and then what clinicians want to see as data generation. And sometimes they are quite poles apart in terms of what we ideally want to be able to pull together. And I think balancing those things is often one of the greatest challenges that you can have. We see that certainly within the functional teams, they will have different pressures at different time points within that launch cycle, and making sure that nobody feels that they're going to struggle as a result is something that needs to be considered very early on. Communication is key. We inevitably talk about nobody works in silos, but everybody has their own expertise. But I think creating the value and the openness so that people feel that they can share appropriately to meet the end goal certainly helps with a lot of these challenges.
Well, which is great, and that's really helpful. Before we move on to the final question, what obviously you touched on your career history at the start of this conversation, and what you did. What drew you into marketing or into these kind of roles in pharma? You and I, we've been part of this industry for a while, where you see that kind of career plan of people that come in as a graduate rep, GP hospital rep, etc., and then they move up and do other things. What drew you into this line?
I mean, one of the greatest things that ever happened to me was I started off with a couple of great mentors.
Good.
And I think if you can have people in the industry who are prepared to give you a guiding hand, then you'll always have a great start.
Great.
And one of the guys that I worked with, he always said to me, he said, at the end of the day, ask yourself the question, have you made a difference? And that's one thing that has always stuck with me throughout my whole career, and actually was the driver for me to go into marketing, was because I wanted to move further and further towards the decision making as to, could we make a difference? It certainly it feels very real in terms of when you work in areas such as rare disease. But actually, even if it's not in rare disease, then is what I am doing on a day-to-day basis making a difference? And I think there are so many inequalities in the world today that I think if you can live by that belief, then you're going to do a pretty good job.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's great. And there's a number of these podcast sessions that I've done, not just in this series, but in the previous ones, a number of people talk about the value in having good mentors, good people around about you, people that you can tap into as you move in your career. Some of these people have maybe retired, or they're not doing, they're not involved in pharma anymore. But just to have those little golden nuggets of advice, but people you can continually go back to. And I'm the same. I have a couple of people that immediately I would try and speak to. When it comes to certain things with related to business as well, which is great.
It's still a human business, Colin.
Without a doubt, and I love you saying that. I think that's the fact that it's so important not to forget that. And in a world that is changing all the time, and a lot of it, and so much of it is for the good.
Yes, absolutely.
We are involved in an industry that is at the end of the day is benefiting people, and what you do in terms of marketing is marketing products that are going to benefit patients and doctors. So for somebody coming into this role just now, or considering coming into this role, or perhaps is it at the stage where they're just about to kick off a launch or whatever? You've already offered a couple of bits, but is there any other advice, Andy, that you can offer people who are at that stage just now?
Yeah, I think the great thing is for me, background is important in terms of your willingness to learn rather than your expertise. I think the great leveler of marketing is that actually it does need a whole mix of people who've got some great backgrounds, and actually can be very young in their careers or can
Hmm.
be quite mature in their careers. But actually, it gives opportunity.
Yeah,
I think the other thing is that people shouldn't feel that they necessarily have to have the greatest creative brain, but they need to have a free thinking brain.
yeah,
And actually, there are lots of people and agencies who can help you with the creative concepting and coming up with what you think your vision is. But actually, not being constrained in your thinking is a real great opportunity.
yeah,
And I think we sometimes work in a world of vanilla, and uh,
yeah,
and and I and
yeah.
I think the odd splash of purple is no bad thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and allowing that space, I suppose. Internally, you've had that probably discussions in the companies you've worked with where, well, maybe you haven't. I don't know. You maybe had to say to people, "You need to give me this space to think like this," and
Yes.
you're maybe throwing some ideas at them, and they're sitting around the table going, "I'm not too sure about that," and but having that space and to have those ideas, I would imagine is really, really important as well.
Yeah, and I think the pharmaceutical world is perceived as a highly restrictive environment,
Yeah,
because of
yeah,
all the rules and regulations, and quite rightly they're there for a reason. But that's not to say that within those rules that we can't be coming up with the occasional crazy idea,
yeah,
that people want to engage with. And I always say that if I was the customer, would this really make me think any differently? And if I can't answer that question in a positive way, then it has to go in the bin.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree, and I think it's the word that does tend to get used for a number of industries as well to try and create that interest is to be slightly disruptive. Um,
Disruptive is a very commonly used frame and
yeah,
sorry phrase, and I'm guilty of using that quite a lot these days.
yeah,
But I think it's true. I think we want to be seen as innovators, inventors. Always coming up with something new. But I think sometimes, the danger is certainly the pharmaceutical world is a world of me toos, and that's just not true. I just think we
yeah,
have to reconvince people, and if we call it disruptive behaviour, then I'm happy with that.
yeah, yeah. No, yeah, and I mean that in the nicest possible way.
Oh
But I think,
yes,
yeah, yeah, I think there really is an opportunity within pharma, which has been through COVID, etc., has been at the forefront of media and has been at the forefront of people's, and it continually is. To be slightly positively disruptive, maybe that's a better way of putting it.
yeah, yeah,
When it comes
yeah.
to the marketplace, and you say splashing that occasional color of purple around, just to brighten things up now and again is no bad thing at all.
Yeah,
So
we expect it of some industries, particularly the technology world. And I think there's no reason why other industries can't adopt the same sort of ways of working.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think also it sets us a very good internal challenge,
yeah,
because I think we should challenge our own um, sort of thinking about the way that we do things on a daily basis.
I agree.
Um,
Yeah,
I certainly think for those of us who've been in the industry a very long time, I love having the interns working with me, and
Yeah.
certainly some of the very junior marketeers, because they instantly challenge the way that I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Long may that continue.
Oh, without a doubt, absolutely, without a doubt. We see that, and fairly regularly here as well. And I think if I was to bring my kids into our business, I'm not saying that they would completely revamp it, but they would certainly throw some ideas that we've never thought about and never considered.
Yeah,
Some of which I
yeah.
would quickly put in the bin. But no, I agree. I agree, and I think if we want to bring on the best talent into the pharma industry, we need to allow for that free thinking. We need to
Yeah,
allow for people to come and express those ideas and those thoughts around valuable products that will help our patients. Great.
correct.
Listen, Andy, that has been really, really helpful. I thank you. I'm obviously speaking to you in the background. You are an incredibly, incredibly busy man. So I do, and I'm sure people watching and listening to this will value the time. As you said, you've been in the industry for a long time, so I'm hoping some of your old pals, etc., will be watching this and placing some comments or sending you some DMs. That's a direct message, by the way. Um, just commenting on your podcast ability. But thank you. Listen, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great to have you on board today.
No problem at all, Colin, anytime. And obviously happy for people to reach out to me.
Great stuff. Thank you. Take care. Bye for now.
Thanks, Colin. Bye.